Hello, I'm Alex Cox, Game Director of Mafia the Old Country, and welcome to this long-awaited second episode of our Director's Commentary series. We started with the prologue a while ago, and after a lengthy consultation process, we decided to move on to Chapter 1. So now we're here. I'm joined by Josh Zammit, Design Director on Mafia the Old Country.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And just a note to anyone who, for some incomprehensible reason, hasn't played the game yet, we are going to spoil the absolute hell out of every single thing that comes on the screen, so consider yourself warned. Okay, all right, let's get stuck in. An atmospheric intro shot and the title Famiglia, which might give everyone a clue as to the theme of this chapter. I think we managed to master that quite well by writing it in Sicilian, so I don't think anybody didn't give the whole game away. We'll come back to that later. Just a quick recap of the story to this point. Enzo, our hero, we just saw him on the screen there, survived a mine disaster in the prologue. He also had a confrontation with this character on the screen here, a guy called Il Merlo, survived that and escaped from the mine, pursued by mine guards. He took refuge in a barn, and now the mine guards have caught up with him, and the story proceeds from here.
Yeah, so this is so our second stealth beat in the game, but the first proper stealth, in a sort of a properly failable sense. Originally that prologue section was really just about teaching you cover and moving between them, and now we're getting into some more detailed functionality of the features, like the focus mode, which I know is a bit of bread and butter, but some people aren't that enthused by. But for players who really need to know where the enemies are, it's quite useful.
Yeah, that's right. The instinct mode, wasn't it? There was supposed to be a more extended sequence, wasn't there, in the prologue, explaining this, grounding it a bit more in Enzo's backstory as a miner. He has these advanced instincts, surviving in the dark depths of the mine, that didn't make it into the final game, which I think would have contextualized a bit. And you're right, the feature is a little controversial. I know some people see it as sort of dumbing down the stealth a little bit, but I think we settled on including it as an aid to players that don't necessarily want an extremely stern stealth experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is with Mafia games, it's not a pure stealth game, it's not a pure combat game, and a lot of players are just coming for the story, right? And so we need to accommodate for a wide range of players' tastes. But there we've also introduced some of the other new things, right? Like Enzo's ability to loot enemies, right? And how important that is to the whole gameplay loop, and obviously the choke out takedown, which is another sort of modification on how we approach this. Adding tension, a bit of a challenge to choking somebody out, which then sort of pays off when we start using the knife here.
But we kept on having to come back round to this, didn't we, over and over again? Because I think that the thing that people really we found hard to convey was the whetstone ammo design. Yeah. With this, I think it works well in gameplay, and the idea that we have this limitation on the special abilities of the knife. We wanted to put the knife to the fore. We wanted to make the knife a very valuable sidearm, but it can't become a superpower. So constraining it through the whetstone as an ammunition source made sense, but helping players to understand what that means, particularly most people don't even know what a whetstone is, do they? What do you even call this thing? The sharpener,
It's not it's not a common tool in today's world, I'd say, at least not for people who aren't into bushcraft or whatever. So it was interesting, and for us, the challenge here was figuring out that logical order of challenges, how do we choke first? Do we kill the guy with a knife first? I mean, there's also some narrative tension here, right? Enzo is not supposed to be a crazed murderer at this point, and so
we got over that though.
Yeah, we did get past it a bit, but at the same time we got to a point I think that was good, in the sense that there's a logical build up. He is really fighting for his life at this point, and so taking extreme measures is not beyond him.
I mean, we did go round on that, didn't we, for a while? There was quite a lot of navel gazing around whether or not, Enzo killing people at this point in the story would make sense and whatever. I never heard anybody ever mention that in feedback of playing the game. So
No, absolutely. And, it is an action game, right? So we want to let players get to the action as quickly as possible. And obviously this chapter is a bit slower than the others in the sense that we are doing a lot of heavy lifting on the story side. But I think as an introduction to this core stealth mechanics, I think this worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. And this scene here again. So we're coming back to this family theme. We're about to meet the father of the family, Don Torrisi, the next big character introduction in the story progression. I love his arrival here. It really, how Johnny Santiago's performance as Don Torrisi. Let's start by calling that out. Fantastic realization of this gruff and very sort of hyper masculine mob boss. And I think one of the most iconic bosses in the series now, looking back on it in hindsight. But his arrival here, how he kind of like bosses the scene, intimidates Il Merlo, who up until this point has come across as a kind of a dangerous villain, but he's now sort of shaking in his boots, isn't he?
Yeah, he really brings like a wolfish edge to the whole thing. Like, he's intimidating as heck. And yeah, like Il Merlo is also, phenomenal, very detestable all the way through. I think we couldn't have asked for a better nemesis for Enzo. But yeah, Johnny just rules this scene. Like,
and what we see here is this kind of like, the resurrection of this vendetta between the Torrisi and the Spadaro family. And actually this, although it seems like a kind of a little sort of coincidental moment, this is really the beginning of the whole story in terms of the like this feud between the families that's been dormant for many years at this point, coming back. Enzo happening to sort of arrive here, bring the Spadaros on the Torrisi territory is what really kicks off this next chapter in the Spadaro and Torrisi war. Torrisi here refusing, he takes Enzo under his wing, but not because he needs a farmhand or whatever, but because it's an insult to Spadaro. He's responding to the idea that Il Merlo and his crew have arrived on his land, and he's just refusing to allow them to take their vengeance on Enzo. At this point, everything Torrisi's doing is viewed through the lens of this Mafia life, pushing back against his enemy, making sure that he doesn't concede any ground, which works well for Enzo.
Then you bring him back, Luca.
Works out very well. Until it doesn't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it doesn't work out that well in the end. And then next up, so we've met the dad, we've met Don Torrisi. Who's the next character in our family? It's Luca. Who is Luca?
He's our fabled mentor, right? Like this is the guy, the paternal figure that really.
The uncle, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. Takes Enzo under his wing and teaches him the ropes in a sort of a. He's not that harsh, but he's very firm.
You have a name.
Yeah, I mean, this is how we framed him, isn't it? I mean, again, let's call out Alberto Frezza, the performer who brought Luca to the screen. Fantastic performance, and again, that mix of firm but fair is what makes him very, a character that we relate to. I think that he's been very popular with the development team, very popular with the players of the game. He's as close as we get in our story to a hero mafioso. Something that I try and avoid in the sort of creative direction is painting criminals in this sort of Robin Hood sense, where they're kind of good guys with a the heart of gold who just do crime through circumstance. But we need characters that are very relatable in the story, of course, and Luca is as close as we get to that sort of hero gangster in our story.
Where were you headed?
Yeah, he's definitely very principled, and that carries through, right? He's kind of I would say the angel on Don Torrisi's shoulder. whereas Tino is more of the devil.
Place to rest your head.
Yes, that's a good way of framing it. And to continue with our familial theme, here is we arrive at the home,
A little different.
the home of the Torrisi family, the vineyard, the base of of operations for the Torrisi gang, and our primary narrative hub for both tiers of our family story. We've got the real family. Enzo's an orphan, of course, from his backstory, and he's finding himself here in a kind of a warm and welcoming environment. This is we're laying it on thick here in terms of the sentiment and the discovery of this fantastic new place that he could never have dreamed of only a few days ago, that he would be riding through the gates of this grand villa. But then the other tier is the family, the crime family, like the two sides to the story here. So as far as possible, the goal for this whole chapter is to introduce the family, introduce all the characters, but also to sort of reinforce these dual themes, which are really key to the overarching story of this game.
The part of the world as well, right? This is paradise compared to the sort of blasted out, like scorched sulfur mine area that Enzo has lived in, and the whole reveal of this entire part of the world is beautiful. But the volcanoes ever looming in the background, nobody can escape that.
Yeah, that's right. And just generally, this discovery period, Enzo, finding himself lucking out really in many ways. He sort of raced through the countryside, almost died, and then sort of this new life has sort of fallen into his lap. Is
ensuite bathtub.
That's right. Yeah. Ensuite bathtub, straw on tap, and as many chains as you could shake a stick at.
Wood might be a stretch, but it's yours for now. You get some rest.
It has a functional roof, which is
there you go.
a step up in the world from what he's used to.
That's right. Yeah. Enzo takes a little sleep, has a little rest. He's had a bit of a busy night. And on to our next character introduction in this in our family tree.
Again, one of the most consequential characters in the game, but also, my favourite. I love this guy. He's flawed in a very interesting way. He's also someone you could imagine hanging out with,
I mean, he is a flawed character. That's the whole setup with Cesare's. He's got this deep insecurity. He presents himself here even at the beginning as, as the Don's nephew, as a kind of a big deal around here. But we can tell quite quickly that he's not taken seriously by anybody else in the whole on the vineyard. He's a layabout. All of his interactions have got the grown-ups in the scene berating him or nagging him to do his work, or he's lying. He's a funny guy. He's got great lines. He's got good jokes. He's likable. He's a bit of a bully here, actually, to be honest. But again, that comes from his insecurity in himself. It's a detail of his backstory that he isn't a blood relative of the Don. As much as he goes around bragging about being Don Torrisi's nephew, he's a nephew by marriage. He's the nephew of Don Torrisi's wife, now deceased. And so again, I think that plays into Cesare's insecurity generally. He knows he's not living up to Don Torrisi's expectations. He knows he isn't even the true scion of the family, but he has this position. Don Torrisi's trying his best to sort of raise him to take over. But in many ways he can't help himself.
He's incorrigible.
A crate, crate moving sequence.
It wouldn't be a Mafia game without some crates to carry, right? It had to be here. With the extra details of the clanking wine bottles and all that stuff, but this is a really interesting sequence to build because, obviously this chapter is quite slow in terms of gameplay, but we had a really important job to do here, which was like establishing his new life and introducing all of these characters, but also just showing Enzo doing these menial tasks, which to any one of us would be like highly boring, but to him would feel like luxury because, you know, he's spent like the first part of his life like in this like horrific, dangerous situation, right? And so sleeping in a pig pen that has an actual roof that doesn't leak, and, you know, he's even got his own bathtub in there. Is just like palatial compared to what he'd experienced. And this, you know, is beneath Cesare. And we see him lounging about, ordering Enzo around. He's now got a lackey to sort of boss about. But to us, it was about trying to find the balance of how many of these activities are too many versus, you know, what is right to establish this kind of like his role now.
I think it underpins the whole story, doesn't it? And actually, this is also where we introduced this sort of codified language around people referring to Enzo as the Caruso, characters that disrespect Enzo or look down on him, call him the Caruso, characters that see his, you know, his inner self, refer to him by his name, or certainly don't use this more derogatory term. And as you say, completely at this stage, like while all of the, certainly the men of the vineyard are looking down on Enzo as some kind of you know, lowly worker, you're right. Like, this is a luxury to him. Like, this is you know, we've seen his life at the mine. We've seen what, you know, like what this actually represents to him. So he's actually very pleased to be here and shifting crates. And you know, attending to the horses later, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's inside. I'll get it. And make yourself useful while I'm gone. I'll see what Valentina wants.
Our tour of the family continues. Valentina, Luca's wife, and the housekeeper of the Torrisi estate.
Things are different here. We treat each other with
Yes,
respect.
yes, modelled specifically so that we can see the familial kind of, you know, similarity between her and the future Sam. Actually, like that was something that we remodelled her slightly to make sure that there was some kind of familial look between her and the young boy who we will come across later.
A pig, freshly
But yeah, again, Valentina plays a kind of a, you know, this kind of persistent sort of secret role, doesn't she, through the story of being a confidant to Isabella, but also as being someone that, you know, I think she sees from early in the story. She understands that there's a little bit of like romance between the two, things like that, and she does play a key role towards the end of the story as well. So, just she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but critical role. So here we meet another key character of the Torrisi family, the pig.
Yes, yeah, the old pig carcass. I mean, this is the physics on this are phenomenal, and again, another modification of the crate carry, but this time quite a satisfying fleshy version. But it was important, right, early for us, that it was important to tell the story that the Don is, you know, he has this other side. He's not just a powerful businessman, but he sort of indulges himself by butchering his own meat, which, you know, doesn't really carry through the story in the way that we'd intended originally.
Yeah, we did want that to be a stronger point, didn't we? That Torrisi's, we do get it, I think, right at the end. But like the idea that he's got this sort of like seething violence and anger inside him, you know, from earlier in his career. This guy is a thug who's kind of grown up to sort of take on this sort of more business-like demeanour that we see late at this stage of his life. But inside, he's got this very, very dangerous, violent aspect, and this idea that he goes away somewhere on the vineyard and madly chops up some meat all the time. It's like was supposed to be sort of part of this butcher kind of idea that, again, we do touch on it once or twice in the rest of the story, but it doesn't come across quite as strongly as we intended. But this is the reason why, you know, we went out on a ledge here. You know, and I think, you know, made one of 2025's most realistic pig carcasses, and asked an overburdened character team to give us this asset. If I had any indulgence on the project, if I spent all my creative capital to secure that pig, and I'm still glad that we did. It makes a big statement.
It does, and when he lays it down, it's got a very satisfying flop.
And so we've gone from crate carrying, we've lugged a pig about, and now here's the icing on the cake in some ways. Enzo's third menial chore, which is manure manipulation. Let's say he's going to come in here and tidy up after the horses. Even this, it's a step up for Enzo, isn't it? Of course, Cesare's shirking on his responsibilities.
And I think that's part of the fun of it, right? Because normally he would be the one like doing these pickup tasks, and now he's got somebody he can boss around, and so he's just laying about that speak to his character quite a lot. But from Enzo's perspective, he's like some big guy, but actually, if Enzo wasn't there, he'd probably be doing this himself. So it's interesting, but this is another great plot device for us, right? To sort of set up this next introduction.
I mean, we did question whether this beautifully romantic moment would work surrounded by dung, but I think that doesn't come across. As soon as Isabella arrives in a sunbeam, we forget about the setting. We ignore the fact that there's flies buzzing around, and we see we allow these two to play out their romance, this love at first sight moment, which I think is very effective. Of course, Karina Conti, superb performance as Isabella, and we get the chemistry between these two, Riccardo and Karina. I remember that being on the stage when these two were performing this scene. We'd rewritten this scene furiously beforehand, I remember, because we knew it's a really key moment. It's very, very short. They barely exchange any lines, but we wanted to convey that feeling of love at first sight. If you've ever experienced that yourself, you'll know what I mean. It's a magical moment. And how do we put that across? Obviously, a huge moment in the story. For Enzo, this is going to be actually a moment which is going to, completely upturn the underworld of the Valle Dorata in the long term. The Enzo and Isabella's relationship and the consequences of this do have these sort of ripple effects through the rest of the story.
Smiles quite as beautifully as we have. Like it's.
I mean, that scene there is one of the best, isn't it? Where there's a lot conveyed through these very nuanced performances. So I think kudos to the actors, of course, in the first instance, and then also to the character team and the animators for bringing those small details through. So we've got one more character to meet on our little tour of the Torrisi family.
Another phenomenal character. Definitely another. I mean, not a favourite of the gamers, but another one of mine. I'm drawn to these sinister folk.
Oh, I love this guy.
He's so good.
I wish we'd have had more time to spend with Tino over the course of the story. Again, fantastic performance by Anthony Scordi, who brought this sort of cantankerous and bitter old mafioso to life.
It just carries the sort of darkness in Tino.
And he doesn't have a huge amount of screen time in the story, but his role was always to sort of present this threat from within. The idea that, unlike in previous Mafia stories, again, we're always looking for ways to contrast and add new ideas to kind of our Mafia story tropes that we're introducing per iteration of the franchise. And in this case, the idea that there was somebody inside the family, somebody in that kind of core group of Mafia roles, the Consigliere in this case, does not trust your character and never is convinced by him. And so this idea that there's a dangerous character inside the family that doesn't like you and doesn't trust you, we thought would add this kind of sinister sort of subplot throughout, and I think that was quite effective. He's so this is the culmination of this whole family scene, isn't it? This warm family event. Isabella's name day, a family celebration. We get to see the Don again. In fact, in the original version of this scene, we did see a little interaction and a scene up with the family up on the high table, but we removed that specifically to keep Enzo distant at this point in the story. So Luca has to come down to speak to him. He's down here sitting with the workers. Again, for Enzo, this is a magical moment, like compared to eating in the canteen with the boys at the mine or whatever. He's eating the slop from the mine cart, the food cart in the beginning, which we saw in the prologue. This is an amazing moment for him. This orphan who's discovered a family, who's lucked out here somehow and found himself in this very warm environment with people that treat him with respect and with kindness, with work that doesn't involve the threat of death on a daily basis. And he's met, he met someone maybe in the barn there. But was she a worker maybe? Some sort of. Who was she indeed? Oh, wow. Is that the girl I saw earlier on? This is the moment where, Enzo realizes that there's a little bit more to the apple-bearing girl that he met in the barn. Isabella's revelation as the daughter of Don Torrisi, the princess in this castle, perhaps. And what we've been building to through this whole chapter is the big plot reveal that Isabella is the Don Torrisi's daughter, and our family story is going to be complicated somewhat here because these two have fallen in love.
His first taste of proper wine as well,
Yeah, God knows what he was drinking down the mine.
But even this, there were layers, like originally his hair, I think the idea of the hairstyles changing over the course of the game and the shaved head that came in relatively late, I think over the course of development. But I think it did,
and I think we have got one of the most, advanced hair designs in recent gaming history. Enzo, I completely agree. Obviously, sets him apart from everybody else, doesn't it? It denotes him as a Torrisi.
Isabella, on her name.
And now this is when Enzo realizes that the girl that he saw in the stables there isn't all that she appeared.
Salute.
And this moment where they sort of meet eyes across the party was, one of the earliest. I think the idea that we've been building towards through the whole chapter, again, early, from the very early stage of the creative ideation, when we sort of mapped out their romance. This moment there is, key to the rest of the story. And so that's it for this talk through. Thanks for attending. Thank you, Josh, for your insights.